Nandam, everyone. Let's start this session with the Sadguru Vandanam. Nithyanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyaadilaksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshibhutam Bhavatitam Triguna-rahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Nithyanandam, everyone. It is with immense gratitude and cosmic auspiciousness that we welcome you all to this historic session at the Science Summit UNGA 80, where the world's brightest minds gather to shape the future of humanity. Today, we stand at a sacred confluence, the meeting point of ancient spiritual science and modern innovation, where the eternal truths of Sanatana Hindu Dharma are being revived for global benefit. We are deeply honored to introduce Kailasa, the first nation of enlightenment, the revival of the ancient enlightened Hindu civilizational nation. Kailasa stands as living proof that enlightenment is not just a personal pursuit but a powerful social reality. It is a sovereign space where matter and spirit, tradition and modernity coexist in harmony, where every being is empowered to manifest their highest possibility. At the heart of this revival is the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam, recognized as the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and celebrated worldwide as an avatar, a teacher, scientist, and humanitarian. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has tirelessly dedicated his life to reviving Sanatana Hindu Dharma's most profound sciences, including conscious education, power manifestation, Shaktis, responsible democracy, Vedic feminism, and quantum spirituality, making them accessible to all humanity beyond barriers of nationality or belief. Now, we have a number of speakers as well today with us, but before that, I'd like to introduce the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, through a video. Thank you. I trust you enjoyed the video. And now we are going to start with all of our speakers today. Introducing first myself. My name is Ma Atmadayiki Nitya, and as a devoted disciple of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, I am honored to be a representative of Kailasa, the sovereign order of Sri Kailasa, an ancient enlightened Hindu civilizational nation, and the supreme governing body of Hinduism. I am deeply inspired by the values of Vedic feminism and its transformative potential for women and girls in science. With a passion for empowering marginalized communities, I am committed to breaking barriers and driving innovation that honors the spiritual and cultural heritage of Kailasa. Through my work, I strive to embody the principles of integrity, authenticity, and responsibility that are at the core of Vedic feminism. I'm humbled to share my perspectives of women and girls in science, breaking barriers and driving gender inclusive innovation at the Science Summit UNGA 80, Session 80. It is now my supreme honor to introduce Her Royal Highness Ma Nitya Nandita, the Princess of the United States of Sri Kailasa, a radiant embodiment of Vedic feminism revived by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam. HRH Van Nityanandita stands as one of Kailasa's most dynamic leaders, an accomplished educator, spiritual scientist, international ambassador for Hindu rights and women's empowerment across continents. Having personally lived under the direct guidance of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism since childhood within Bhagavan's Gurukul system and having manifested extraordinary powers, Shaktis, third eye powers, while leading global humanitarian initiatives, Ma Nityanandita exemplifies what becomes possible when divine feminine consciousness is fully awakened. Today, she leads Kailasa's efforts worldwide to empower women and girls through conscious education, trauma healing protocols like completion, third eye awakening, responsible democracy models, and above all, by radiating Advaita, oneness, as her living reality. Please join me with deep reverence in welcoming Her Royal Highness Manityanandita as she shares with us how collaboration with Kailasa can create a world where every woman manifests her highest possibility. Next, we have Roshni Nambiar Schroeder. She is an indigenous Hindu woman representing Nityanandeshwara Paramashiva Hindu Temple. She's an environmental scientist, birth doula, and midwifery student holding master's and bachelor's degree in zoology and environmental science. As a midwifery student and an environmental scientist, she integrates scientific rigor with the traditional wisdom of honoring life. Her journey as a disciple of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, especially in the vibrant ecosystem of Kailasa, inspires her to champion Vedic feminism, a paradigm rooted in awakening and reverence for divine feminine energy, the principle of ahimsa and indigenous wisdom as the answer to current global issues. As a speaker as a speaker at the UNGA Summit, UNGA 80 Summit on women and girls in science, she is passionate about bridging the gap between scientific innovation and spiritual harmony. She believes that we can revive Vedic feminism to break barriers and lead gender inclusive innovation, restoring power, dignity, and equality to every woman and birthing person to honor gender inclusion and reverence for the divine feminine as a source for all of life. Thank you for joining us, Her Royal Highness Manityanandita and Roshni Nambiar Schroeder. Thank you very much for joining us. Next, we have Sarita Pashupaleti, who is an indigenous Hindu woman working as a software engineer. a devoted mother and caretaker of her parents, embodying resilience, grace, and determination, guided by her family guru, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, and his revival of Vedic feminism. Sarita is representing United States of Kailasa, the Gambia. She discovered the strength to excel in STEM while staying deeply rooted in Sanatana Dharma, the Hindu indigenous tradition. Through her guru, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's teachings, Saritas realized that womanhood is wholeness, not a forced choice between career and family, but the empowering ability to be both nurturer and innovator. Her children, inspired by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam's Gurukul vision, thrive academically while remaining grounded in Dharma and cultural integrity. Sarita's life demonstrates how ancient wisdom can guide modern ambition, breaking barriers, preserving heritage, and shaping a gender-inclusive future. Thank you so much, Sarita Pashupaliti, for being here with us. Looking forward to hearing from you. Next, we have Ma Samarpini Nitya. She is representing Nithyananda Meditation Academy UK and is a transformational therapist. She's a founder of truth2joytherapy.com and trauma specialist for women and children. With over 16 years study of Vedic and yogic sciences under the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, she blends ancient wisdom, neuroscience, and trademarked therapeutic methods to access and heal the subconscious mind. As an acharya, a spiritual teacher, healer, and global speaker, Ma Samarpini leads meditation groups, private sessions, and workshops supporting self-esteem and empowerment rooted in universal truths. As a UAN ambassador, she advocates for consciousness, healing, and personal transformation worldwide. Thank you so much, Ma Samarpini, for joining us. Really looking forward to hearing from you. So today's event focuses on women and girls in science, breaking barriers and driving gender-inclusive innovation through the revival of Vedic feminism in Kailasa. This is by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam. In a world still struggling with gender inequality in science and technology fields, Kailasa offers not just hope, but living solutions, which are rooted in spiritual technologies that awaken Shakti, the divine feminine, within every woman and girl. As we participate in this prestigious science summit under the United Nations General Assembly, the 80th session, a platform dedicated to advocating sustainable development through science, we bring forth not only research or policy, but direct experience how Vedic feminism empowers women as creators, innovators, leaders, not by fighting for inclusion, but by manifesting their innate divinity. We will be introducing Sanskrit terminology. By now, some of you would have heard some of the terminology and words you may never have heard before. We invite you, we'd like to invite you to please engage with us, and we will find ways to empower you to engage with that also, with what they mean, what the words mean. And if you have questions at any point, please type them in the chat, and we would like to ensure that you are engaged in all of this journey with us today. So let us open ourselves today to these powerful truths. Let us witness how Kailasa and the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism are gifting humanity with spiritual technologies that break centuries-old barriers and usher in an era where awakened Shaktis, third eye powers, lead our world into peace, prosperity, and oneness. With deep reverence for all present here, and with the blessings of Paramashiva himself, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, let us begin this transformative journey together. Thank you for listening, and if you have any questions at all at any point during the presentation, please feel free to add them in the chat. So our first speaker is going to be Roshni Schroeder. I'd like to invite Roshni to share.
Nithyanandam, everyone. I'm so deeply honored to be in this amazing platform as part of the UNGA Science Summit, the 80th one as part of the UN General Assembly, speaking on a subject that is extremely dear to my heart, and both with my deep devotion to His Divine Holiness, Nithyananda Paramashivam, and my deep love of science. This confluence for me has been a really amazing and wonderful journey. So this segment is on science and Hinduism. And here I would like to ask the question, and for you to think about it, as to how you think science and spirituality meet. Do they meet? Is there a huge gap? Are these the things that we need to consider as we enter a world which is facing climate change, destruction of many natural areas, and a lot of issues with sustainability and the way in which we live? So I pose this question to you. How do science and spirituality meet to form the basis of breaking barriers for women and girls in science? So to do this, we have to think about what science actually means. So to start with a dictionary definition, science is the systematic study of the structure and behavior of the physical and natural world through observation, experimentation, and the testing of theories against the evidence obtained. So if there's an issue, we investigate what the issue is, and we collect data and come to a conclusion. Now, the science within Dharma, which is the cosmic law of alignment with universal intelligence, teaches us, as the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has mentioned, that science is integrated within the cosmic law, meaning it isn't separate from spirituality, but an expression of conscious sovereignty. So true science in this context requires empirical observation, theoretical frameworks, cause and effect relationships, and verifiable results, extending to spiritual and inner experiences. So how do we merge what happens outside of us with what happens inside of us? So the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism emphasizes that Hinduism offers verifiable and practically applicable knowledge crucial for humanity's future, challenging the notion of modern science as the sole arbiter of the truth. So up until this point in human history, we have tried to explain what happens in our natural world, but for thousands of years, Hinduism, through the form of Vedic rishis, has done inner science. So using their own bodies as an inner scientific laboratory. And now we are finding that quantum physics is bridging the gap between the two. So today's talk is really about that. It is, how do we look at the barriers we're facing? And in this particular session, to do with feminism, how are women and girls not able to be a part of this conversation to the extent that they could be? And if we advance the slides, just one more, so we can give you something to look at also. So the UN Women's site had issued a video called the Autocomplete Truth that talked about women's history or women's contributions from the time of Amelia Earhart all the way through to our current situation. And what this shows us is that women have really only been contributing for about 100 years. And I know that deep down inside, we will know that that isn't true. Because as long as humanity has been around, women have been sole contributors to a whole infrastructure of stability. So here we hope to present to you information about the fact that women throughout history, especially Indigenous Hindu women, which also speaks to the Indigenous culture globally, have been keen contributors to science and the natural world. And they have actually led a lot of the discoveries that we don't even think of today, but are so key in the way in which we actually operate every day. So to begin this journey, of course, let's discuss some of the barriers currently in humanity as we see it that currently exist. And then we will zoom out historically and look at what the contributors of Vedic feminism contributed. And then we're going to zoom back and see how we can bring all of this together. So we're excited to present this to you. And we will start with the barriers. So globally, women continue to be dramatically underrepresented in science. We make up only about 1/3 of scientific researchers and just 22% of science, technology, engineering, and math, which I will refer to as STEM from here on, jobs in major economies like the G20. Despite the fact that women, in this context of gender, form nearly half of the population. This persistent gender gap in science creates significant barriers for progress on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which I will refer to as SDGs, especially those related to gender equality, education, reduced inequalities, and innovation. So some of the key statistics from the United Nations that have been proposed as barriers are that, like I mentioned, women constitute approximately 30% of researchers worldwide and only 22% of STEM jobs in G20 countries. And as you can tell, if we were 50% of the population, that is still really low. Women are also underrepresented in leadership roles. Fewer than 1 in 10 STEM leaders are female in most countries. And there are also regional disparities. In some countries, women make up less than 10% of researchers. So systemic barriers include cultural norms, limited policy support, and lack of resources, all of which limit educational and career development in STEM fields for women. There's also a huge educational gap. As of 2025, 122 million girls remain out of school globally, which directly impacts their pipeline into scientific fields. That is a huge issue and a huge lack in the ability to have innovation or advancement in education. And this leads to a leaky STEM pipeline, with many girls and women leaving the field at various career stages. And then there are cultural and institutional biases, often excluding women from leadership, funding, and decision-making roles, limiting their impact and career progression. So if you think about the fact that half of the population doesn't get to come to the table to make decisions, you're losing them at every step of the way when it comes to research funding, when it comes to being able to speak to the STEM fields. We're severely lacking in representation. So what are the UN Sustainable Development Goals? There are 17 interconnected global goals that were adopted by all UN member states in 2015 to end poverty, to reduce inequality, and protect the planet by the year 2030. So there is a visual in the next slide where you can see all the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. One more. Okay, this visual might make a lot more sense. So the particular goals that are most relevant to our discussion, if you're able to see the screen, is Sustainable Development Goal 5, which is gender equality. Sustainable Development Goal 4, which is quality education. Sustainable Development Goal 7, which refers to affordable and clean energy. Sustainable Development Goal 10, which is to reduce inequalities. And then additionally, women and girls not being in STEM fields also impacts Sustainable Development Goals 3, 8, 9, 16, and 17. So that's almost half of the UN Sustainable Development Goals that are directly related and impacted by women and girls not being represented in science, technology, engineering, and mathematical fields. So one of the sources that we looked at stated that despite visible gains, gender biases and inequities still are the cause for why women are not represented. And it starts from girls. So if you think about the entire life stage, there's a lack of gender equality from this perspective. So empowering women in STEM not only addresses justice and equality, but also strengthens science itself, leading to more creative solutions and also moving towards global progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. So without breaking down these persistent barriers, progress across these goals will slow as the world's science and problem-solving potential remains untapped. So not having women and girls in many of these fields means that we are not going to be able to protect our planet because there's so much missing from the scientific fields and representation. So we're going to take you into a deeper understanding of how the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has reinvigorated deeper progressive ideologies through practical policies, programs, and socio-spiritual empowerment pathways, enabling women not only to participate in science, but to lead innovation from a conscious space of spiritual sovereignty. So we'll be addressing this, and also the aim is to advance Indigenous science for women. So this presentation, as I stated, will go into how the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Nithyananda Paramashivam, the reviver of the ancient enlightened Hindu civilizational nation of Kailasa, has systematically resurrected this paradigm through the doctrine and practice of Vedic feminism. So it leads to having gender inclusivity, which we will talk about a little later, and innovation in science and beyond. And this foundation is Vedic feminism, and it's a unique spiritual scientific framework. So Nityanandita to talk about Vedic feminism and the forgotten foundation and the divine feminine. Please join us in welcoming Her Royal Highness Ma Nithyanandita.
of that would be the contributions from women and girls in science. So it's a key factor that is going to support making the UN goals successful.
Yes, Ma, and the statistics are so staggering. We can only touch upon a few, but just from an economic standpoint, women make about 69 cents for every dollar that a man makes. And so
Wow.
even not contributing economically continues to impact family dynamics, the stability of an economy. And so we're missing out on actually capturing the intense and immense innovation that can be provided by creating an infrastructure that supports and celebrates feminism, or having women bring their very unique perspective to this field.
Absolutely. And what a huge resource that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, is tapping into. So simple. Sometimes the solution is right under your nose, to say, and it feels like that would be the case here, putting it into simple terms. Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing those points so clearly.
Sure, Ma, it's my pleasure. And it's such a vast topic, but really, I mean, now we just want to move from the barriers to where we can actually make changes and have global impacts quickly. And part of this initiative, being part of the UN and hoping for collaboration in the future, as we will discuss, is to be able to achieve these sustainable development goals faster with the framework from Vedic feminism as provided to us really easily by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. And Her Royal Highness Ma Nithyanandita speaking on this because she has firsthand experienced what it's like to be empowered from a young age all the way through the ability to just expand into that consciousness and to be able to speak to anyone and present on anything will really be enhanced by the further parts of this.
Absolutely. Over to Her Royal Highness Manityanadita.
Nityanandam, thank you so much, Ma Roshni and Ma Atmadayaki, for that beautiful introduction and context. Because in today's world, it is all the more the need to talk about the importance of the revival of true Vedic feminism, what it stands for. Because today, the state that the world is in, like both of you beautifully highlighted, in so many different aspects, and the way how women, like Ma Roshni addressed a very important point, without including women in the field of science, and with the current way how the education is rarely available for women, so many SDGs are largely affected. SDG 5, SDG 4 of quality education, gender equality, SDG 7, SDG 10, to name a few, but I'm sure it impacts every other goal in a huge way. And she beautifully highlighted about how empowering women in STEM not only addresses justice and equality, but also strengthens science itself, leading to more creative solutions and accelerating global progress towards the SDGs. Actually, this reminds me of one of the very beautiful statements that my guru, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, says, and which I think sets the tone of what true Vedic feminism stands for, what true Vedic Hindu feminism stands for. I still remember there's one satsang in one of the discourses, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism highlighted the necessity, the importance of the role that women have. And one statement very beautifully summarizes it. Swamiji says that if politics were to be handed over to women, the whole world will not have a single war. And I know this statement is so powerful, it's so empowering, but it also underscores a very important fact, a very important statement. In Sanatana Hindu Dharma, in Hinduism, to anyone, any time we want to add sacredness to anything, We just need to we naturally make it as feminine. Like, for example, if you want to make water sacred, we call water as Ganga Mata. We want to make cow sacred, we call her as Go Mata. We want to make planet Earth sacred, we call her as Bhumi Devi. We want to make nature sacred, we call her as Prakriti. You want to make education sacred, we say Devi Saraswati, we call her as Devi. You want to make power sacred, we say Para Shakti, Shakti. You want to make wealth sacred, we say Lakshmi. Anything in Sanatana Hindu Dharma to add sacredness, the word Ma, the feminine aspect is attributed to it. That is the beauty of Sanatana Hindu Dharma and what the divine feminine consciousness stands for in Hinduism. Today I'm having so many viewers, so many participants who have joined here. Ma Hansa Vagjiani, and I have Ma Parashakti Yogini, Ma Rani Nair, and Lucero Tenorio, and I have Lakshmi Ramagopal and Potail Vishwanathaya, Brian Schroeder, Rohini Ram, and we have Ambassador Honorable Nana Yao Michael. It's wonderful to have you all. Thank you so much for joining here. And it's a privilege for me to stand in this esteemed platform to represent the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, to what Kailasa stands for, because like Ma Roshni very beautifully highlighted, what the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has revived in Kailasa, the true Vedic feminism. The Aboriginal indigenous agricultural tribe of Hindus hailing from India have roots in ancient, enlightened Vedic civilization. These indigenous traditions are known for their progressive ideologies, gender inclusivity, and empowerment, by which women are not merely respected as equal to men, rather worshipped as a manifestation of the divine feminine. And here's where I'd like to highlight an important point. We do not, and when I make the statement, I make it with all the responsibility that it carries. We do not stand for or advocate for gender equality, because trying to make two people equal is just sheer violence. We stand for gender inclusivity, to celebrate every being to what they are, what they represent, to what they stand for. And yes, I see Ma Zeng is resonating with it. I'm sure you connect with it. And every viewer that are connecting with it, I request you all to take a moment to share in the YouTube comment section. You all can post any questions, any of you. We have doctors, we have people, women from various career walks of life here. Ma Francisca from New York has joined in here. It's wonderful to have you here. And she's a pediatrician joining here from New York. And just to see this room that I'm in, and I know many of you here who have achieved various things in your life from various different career walks, and every one of you sitting here will surely resonate with this statement of mine, because this statement that I'm making carries a lot of responsibility, as I said, because while world talks about gender equality, trying to make, you cannot compare an orange and an apple. You enjoy an orange for what it is and an apple for what it stands for. Same way in Sanatana Hindu Dharma, we treat every being as a manifestation of consciousness. Every single being is worshipped as a manifestation of ultimate divinity. So is a woman. So every gender is celebrated for uniqueness, not for equality. So Sanatana Hindu Dharma stands for gender inclusivity, not gender equality. There's a very beautiful verse in the Manu Dharma Shastra, Manusmriti, the 3rd chapter, 56th verse, which sets the tone of how the feminine gender is treated. Because when I say about, how women are treated, I also want all of us to remember it does not mean men or any other gender for that matter were oppressed or were suppressed. So I am talking about how women were treated, because we are talking about women in girls and science, and how the gender inclusive innovation through the revival of Vedic feminism. So I'm going to highlight the aspect of women, but at the same time, I'd like to remind everybody about how progressive and advanced we were. We believed in gender inclusivity. So coming to how women were treated, there's a very beautiful verse from the 3rd chapter, the 56th verse of Manusmriti, which says, Yatra naryastu pujyante ramante tatra devataha etraitastu na pujyante sarvastra pala kriyaha. It says, where women are honored, divinity blossoms there. And wherever women are dishonored, all action, no matter how noble it may be, remains unfruitful. Hinduism is rich in diverse tradition that has a long history of empowering women. In fact, Hinduism, and I take all pride in saying this, Hinduism is the only religion in the world which has source scriptures written by women. Only Sanatana Hindu Dharma which is the longest living civilization on planet Earth, which has its source scriptures written by women. That sums it up all. Because when we say women were worshipped, women were revered, we're not just talking about keeping women in a higher pedestal alone, but the status, the power, the key positions that women held. The idea of Parashakti, or the supreme feminine power, highlights the importance of feminine in Hinduism and the role women play in maintaining the balance of the universe. Like everything, like I highlighted to you all earlier, to add sacredness to anything, we just say it as Mata, mother. In fact, Swamiji, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, very beautifully says Hinduism has 10,000 diverse traditions. We call it as Sampradayas, each of which is independently capable of being a standalone religion in itself. So these 10,000 Sampradayas, let's say, if these 10,000 Sampradayas were to be erased from the face of planet Earth, leaving just one Sampradaya of mother worship, just the mother worship sampradaya alone is capable enough to revive and re-establish the whole of Sanatana Hindu Dharma in all its pomp and glory. Because mother worship is the key, is the base in Sanatana Hindu Dharma. How women were celebrated, how women were worshipped. In Hinduism, women were empowered to have, women had rights to education, women had key political powers, women were rulers, and there were so many key positions that women held. In fact, the whole universe is worshipped as Devi, Parashakti, which embodies the ultimate power. According to the Hindu tradition, Devi Parashakti, appearing as Devi Bhuvaneshwari, is referred to as Bhuvanai, meaning the goddess of the entire universe. Her Brahmanda Yoni, or the cosmic womb, is the origin for all beings, where all beings merge back. Even the earth is viewed as Bhumi Devi, highlighting a deep reverence for the sacred feminine. So, worship of feminine consciousness is unique to Sanatana Hindu Dharma. And the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism himself was initiated into universal mother worship, the Shakta tradition. And actually, here's where I'd also like to invite my co-speakers for them to shed some light on this, because this subject is something so interesting for me. This is something so that I'm so passionate about, and I share the equal passion just like Ma Atmadaya and Ma Roshni and all the other speakers here with us today share. And on this note, I have a question from Ma Rohini Ram, and which is, as a woman of science who works in a field that is consistently underrepresented by women in healthcare, there's a global failure to acknowledge and promote inclusivity. What would you suggest is one thing that we can do to have impact on individual level, be compromising on intel and capability? Roshni, would you like to share what your thoughts are on this subject?
Yes, Ma. And I think one of the
Yes, Ma. And I think one
sustainable development goals is that it shows you right now what we need to know to address the issue. And I think for me, being in a scientific field, what really helped was other people just letting me have a voice at the table. For other people to invite, when you see that some representation needs to happen, it's to imbibe kind of the cognitions that we are expressing today, what the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has mentioned and has outlined so beautifully about the beauty of Vedic feminism, just to know that and to go forward. to go forward. So it's wonderful, Rohini Ram, for your question. It is absolutely a very appropriate question for this time. So I think now, if you are able to see our slides, as you can see, Vedic feminism, as Her Royal Highness mentioned earlier, is not about conquering men or achieving equivalence, but strengthening the whole universe. So we're here today to talk about strengthening the whole universe by celebrating the divine feminine. And when you think about feminism as we know it societally, it's a very different concept. So even just having that understanding. So if we would like to discuss how it changes our cognition about feminism, I think that is a very apt point going forward from here.
And thank you, Ma Roshni, for that beautiful answer. Because I, like you shared beautifully, Ma, one thing that really will change the whole perspective from which to answer, even to add to what the question that Ma Rohini has asked, just one thing that could change the whole perspective of how we look at it, how we can address it is, firstly, even if women are educated, even if women are made to understand that we don't need today, most of that like most of our energy is being spent on trying to fight for this equality, trying to see if we can we can get a place or we can get this. But fundamentally, to make a woman, to awaken that para shakti in a woman, when just a woman awakens her divine feminine consciousness, that itself, just reminding a woman of her true potential, awakening her consciousness, makes changes the very identity in of which that they cherish or that they carry. And I just would like to add talking about this subject to all the viewers that are watching us here, I'd like to add a few points for every one of you about how women were in Sanatana Hindu Dharma. In the Vedic era, there were numerous Hindu scholars who influenced the world. I can go on giving a lot of references, but I'm going to take this opportunity to give a few important references for all of you about how women, what were the positions, what were the type of things that women did in Hinduism. Because here's a civilization that has stood the test of time, that has been the longest living civilization, which has very successfully contributed to so many aspects. So here, just to give you all a few examples of this, right? Here we have various women who played key instrumental positions in various different discoveries and various different revivals, I would say. So one such example is we have Akka Mahadevi. Akka Mahadevi is a great scholar, and she is an enlightened being who established one of the earliest responsible democracy along with Sri Basavanna in the Lingayat tradition of Sanatana Hindu Dharma. And this, she has established the Anubhava Mantapa. All the Kannadigas here and many of the Hindus here might be aware. And it is Akka Mahadevi who established the Anubhava Mantapa. So the Anubhava Mantapa is one of the earliest references of how the responsible democracy was established in Sanatana Hindu Dharma. And similarly, we have various other references, and I'm going to take this opportunity to take you all through a few of them. We have even Rishi Gargi. Actually, this is one of my favorite example talking about Maharishi Gargi, because she was an amazing scholar, and she had actually, Rishi Gargi had an debate in the court of King Janak, which is like, she was able to stand there and debate, challenge one of the world's topmost scholar to the philosophy that he stood for, and she wins the debate. This reference is found in the Ramayana, a very beautiful incident from the Ramayana, which also depicts how they were celebrated. They were given a pedestal, where they were also having the rights to express their opinions. And actually, in fact, this would highlight to what Roshni was adding. You mentioned about giving opportunity to women would also bring a lot of creativity or a lot more additions and development to the science, the field of it. In fact, the example of Rishi Gargi is one such. She had challenged a concept that was believed and accepted by everyone around, and she challenged all the men, all the scholars out there, and she won that. After which, the scripture itself, the very theology itself, was upgraded based on her answer. She got in depth to that. So I feel like, this is something that highlights what Roshni had shared.
I wanted to add one point. Actually, it's on Rohini.
And
I wanted to add one point. Actually, it's on. So sorry to interrupt. I thought you were paused. Something that it's Rohini Ram's question, the last part. So it was, what would you suggest is the one thing we can do to have that impact on an individual level was being uncompromising on intellect and capability? Well, this is I was contemplating on your question, and I felt like the last part of that is that this is the whole point, that there is an innate intelligence that flowers, that we all have the potential to flower into, and this is what is celebrated in Vedic feminism. So it's not exclusive only to women, but also it's all genders. So there is, in that intelligence, there is already capability and of course intelligence. So intellect, it would be the diluted version of what our capabilities are in a way. So there would be no compromising of it. Simply allowing your beingness to flower is what would bring the impact. That's the whole point of today's presentation, of how the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is doing that. See, that what you can do on an individual level through the initiations, which we will talk about obviously through the presentation, and the revival of like the examples of the wonderful women that Her Royal Highness Nithyanandita is giving, those, they are innately, naturally capable and have the intelligence. Okay, so there is no compromising, because the flowering is unabashedly, unapologetically very Vedic and divine feminine consciousness. Does that make sense? That's one thing I wanted to add. So there would be no need to be compromising or worried about being compromising on your intellect. There is no shrinking, it's only expansion. That's what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Ma. And also, actually, talking about this, I'd also like to highlight about how there are various different factors that contributed to the way how, see, today, this entire, whether all the spiritual masters or all the warriors, we have Devi Meenakshi, Rani Lakshmi Bai, and then we have Velu Nachiyar, Ahilya Bai Holkar, and I can go on. And there's so much to talk about each one of them. And each of these women collectively demonstrate the significant historical presence and impact of women in various esteemed roles within Hinduism, serving as inspirations for intellectual leadership and the spiritual achievements. In Hinduism, women were not viewed as inferior or subordinate to men. Rather, they are seen as complementary and co-creators in the cosmic dance of life. So the Shakta tradition of Hinduism further exemplifies this reverence by worshipping the feminine consciousness, celebrating Mother Goddess as the supreme source of power and creation. So, this deep rooted respect for feminine divinity underscores the intrinsic gender equality within the Hindu philosophy. So, the revered position of women in ancient Hindu civilization played a major role in the then 56 Hindu nations being economic, cultural, and intellectual powerhouses accountable for the success of ancient times to more than a whopping 40% of global GDP that the ancient Hindu nations dominated. And here are a few more factors that I'd like to rope in. And Ma Roshni, would you like to add on further about how this impact or what the Sanatana Hindu Dharma was established? We have spoken about its, the time-tested, foolproof way that it has established, an example that it has set. So where did this decline start, and how did this go on? Would you like to highlight that about that?
Yes, Ma. I feel like there may not be enough time, but we should probably talk about what led to the destruction of the very structure of Sanatana Hindu Dharma. And as many of you know that are well versed in history, you have to know that there were colonialism, and a lot of the destruction of indigenous wisdom happened. Invasions over time, religious intolerance, this idea of caste-based violence and extremism in contemporary times have led to this decline in Vedic feminism. And there was a large part of history that's been missing because history is usually told in the tongue of the captor or the people who are colonizing. Now, knowing this and having missed a large part of that history, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has highlighted what this systematic destruction of feminism did for the culture. And I think this speaks to indigenous wisdom all over the world that has had a history of colonization. And so leading through multiple centuries of destruction of our ancient Gurukul system, of our temples, of all of the knowledge base that was there with which our society was created and flourished for a long time. I think, Ma, you can probably speak to the statistics of the GDP of India at the time prior to colonialism. And so there's a huge historical basis. It's a very deep and quite saddening history, but it's very much there and highlighted in the United States of Kailasa's history, which the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has so beautifully put together and has created as a historical source document to explain to us, really, in this context, how Vedic feminism was destroyed. Excuse me. And now what we're having to deal with as the repercussions. And Mahatma Daya, if you would like to add to the conversation.
Well, absolutely. These amazing examples that we've had and our possibility, which through various methodologies with where we've lost, and a destruction of indigenous Hindu temples, of women, has happened, which has meant that the infrastructure that was created and made available to the world for the expansion of all has had an impact. It hasn't been just an impact on the indigenous tribes, it has had a global impact. So the fact that it almost feels like the fact that we've lost that tradition for such a long time has meant that the problems that the UN is dealing with at the moment, they wouldn't need to deal with them had we not lost those systems. So the way I look at it is the destruction of this all-inclusive knowledge centers of Hinduism, the Vedic traditions, all of this has had an overall impact which is still affecting humanity now. So the level of violence that is happening in the world, and all of the goals that have been set by the UN, these would not even need to be in place. The way I look at it is, had we not had the destruction happen. So sadly, it's from 336 BCE to 1634 CE, 12 instances of Johar occurred, impacting the Hindu tribe, the women of Dahir Rajput, Ranthambore, Kampili kingdom. The level of violence that has happened has affected in such depth. So now, of course, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism himself has endured persecution, and it has been an ongoing persecution over a decade, including over 70 assassination attempts, extreme inhuman torture and enforced disappearances, over 250 sexual assaults on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and the AIAT members, the lawfare of 120 false cases, massive hate propaganda in electronic media of over 17,000 hours, and print media of over 25,000 articles, destructions of heritage properties worth over 27 million US dollars. So it's not just that we've had the traditions persecuted, the persecution is still ongoing. So Vedic feminism, as taught by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, fundamentally differs from modern conflict-based feminism. It is not about conquering men or merely achieving equivalence, like as mentioned by Her Royal Highness and also by Roshni. It is about strengthening the whole of universe. And it's about recognizing that unique place of women as Shakti. So the key point I wanted to share is really that the situation that we are in, where we even have to set such goals, is because these structures were destroyed. And the solution for it is to revive those structures back again. One, to address the errors already made, and for the future generations to have a much healthier future lifestyle in every area. So this is what I would say, Roshni. And so, yeah, I mean, in conclusion, I suppose Vedic feminism offers a paradigm shift. It moves beyond viewing women's empowerment as a struggle for equality, as we've mentioned earlier, to recognizing our inherent spiritual sovereignty and unique capacity for conscious creation and scientific contribution, grounded in the very fabric of existence. So this spiritual scientific foundation of gender inclusive foundations, which is what Kailasa is built upon, is revived by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, and that's what we are building here. So, that brings me on to the gender inclusive leadership and social innovation in Kailasa. So as we've, little bit more about Kailasa, it's not just a nation. It's not just a nation, it is the living ecosystem of enlightenment, where every being, regardless of gender, is empowered to realize their highest possibility. Kailasa is not just a geographical nation or an organization. It is the living, breathing revival of the ancient enlightened Hindu civilization or ecosystem, where every being is empowered to realize their highest possibility. This vision is not new. It is rooted in the timeless truths. It's the Sanatana Satyas revealed by Paramashiva himself, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, through the Vedas and Agamas. So what is gender inclusive leadership, we would ask, gender inclusive leadership is the conscious living expression of Paramashiva's oneness. Well, leadership is not limited or defined by gender identity, male, female, transgender, or any other, but it's rooted in the recognition that every being is an embodiment of the divine. So in Kailasa and Sanatana Hindu Dharma, as revived by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, gender inclusive leadership means leadership beyond gender labels. So the soul, Atman, has no gender. It is pure consciousness. The scriptural reference for that is Napumsana Stri Nacha Napumsakam. This is from Nirvana Shaktam. Leadership roles are open to all. Women, men, transgender individuals. It's based on responsibility, yogya, capability, shakti, and contribution, seva, not birth or external identity. It's embodying Ardhanarishwar consciousness. So Ardhanarishwar is Shiva and Shakti in one body, the ultimate symbol of gender inclusivity in Hinduism. True leadership integrates both divine masculine qualities, which is clarity, action, and divine feminine qualities like compassion, nurturing. So every leader in Kailasa is encouraged to awaken both these energies within themselves. There are scriptural foundations like Yatra Naryatstu Pujyante Ramante Tatra Devataha, where women are worshipped, as mentioned by Her Royal Highness. Vedic society included women rishis like Gargi and Maitreya as thought leaders. Mahabharata honors Shikhandi, who's a transgender leader. Adi Shankaracharya says in his Nirvana Shaktam, I am neither male, nor female, nor neuter. I am pure consciousness. He established monasteries where both men and women could pursue spiritual leadership. So, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa experienced Advaita, oneness, through worshipping Kali Ma, and as well as living moments as Radha, the divine feminine, showing transcendence over gender identity, which leads to spiritual realization. And the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism himself says, my own experience and demonstration in Kailasa from childhood, I experienced myself beyond body gender identification. As Paramashiva himself manifesting through this body, this realization allowed me to relate with all beings without any bias or limitation based on gender identity. So that's the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism himself in his own experience. So why gender inclusive leadership? In most societies today, even spiritual ones, leadership has been limited by gender biases, stereotypes, or exclusionary traditions. But Sanatana Hindu Dharma always recognized all genders as sacred expressions of consciousness. Transgender beings were celebrated as divine manifestation, as mentioned earlier, like Ardhanarishwar. Leadership was based on responsibility. So Kailasa revives this original model. Here, leadership, in Kailasa, leadership means radiating oneness beyond all labels. And also manifesting Paramashiva's intelligence for Lok Kalyana, which means for universal good. In Kailasa, the Adinams, women, men, transgender devotees are all initiated and empowered to perform the highest temple rituals, Rudra Abhishekams, Chandi Homa, Navaratri Pujas without restriction. Everybody is equally given the opportunity from their willingness to learn to participate. And like during major festivals like Navaratri, which we are having the beginning of next week, or Mahashivaratri, you will see female sannyasinis and transgender devotees leading abhishekams alongside male priests. The spiritual teachings and initiations, women serve as acharyas, spiritual teachers, giving discourses on Upanishads, Agamas, and Bhagavad Gita. So in the decision-making structures, you'll see that the governing council of Kailasa include women sannyasinis, male sannyasis, householders of all backgrounds, including transgender representatives. Decisions are made based on responsibility, yoga and contribution, not by gender quotas or tokenisms. You'll find that women are 90% is in the Kailasa governance basically has 90% women. It's a high percentage. Major projects are run and led like Annadan, free food distribution through Gurukul education programs, temple construction are led by teams comprising all genders. Then we will be learning about the Gurukul education system in a moment as well. Women are empowered beyond rituals. They have administrative authority. Women manage temple finances, accounts, actually they lead legal teams, oversee international outreach programs for Kailasa's humanitarian work.
And also,
Right.
Mahatmadeya, just one more thing
Yes.
that I wanted to add here is you're beautifully highlighting about the contributions that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is bringing forth to reviving the Vedic feminism. And here's a few factors. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has dedicated his entire life to the grand revival of Vedic feminism. And which is why here you can see where one of the launch of 108 women empowerment centers. This was way back in 2009, where over 108 women empowerment centers were inaugurated. And we have various different microfinancing projects. And what the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism also did was the whole how women today in today's world, women are marginalized and various different things are used where they're stopped from. There's a lot of barriers, if I may call it. There are a lot of barriers for women to participate in the in temple rituals. And you beautifully highlighted how in Kailasa women sannyasis get an opportunity to stand and offer the worship, be the main priestesses of the temple. And that is something that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism revived, brought it back, which is part of Hinduism. In Sanatana Hindu Dharma, women were always doing it. But in the modern day, in today's day, all of these were diluted due to persecution and due to various different things that, like Mahatmadeya beautifully highlighted. And the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism launched from there on a number of social initiatives such as Annadan, where rural women, especially widows, single moms, and survivors of violence, are trained into life skills, forms of employment to empower them with self employment. We have various such initiators like the Nithyananda Lakshmi, one of the microfinancing projects from Kailasa, where women were given empowered to become entrepreneurs. Women were given the funds, all the resources needed for them to become entrepreneurs. Women were empowered to take up jobs, and we had the Nityananda Asha Kiran. These are various types of initiatives that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism spearheaded, where women were empowered, women were given the stage, the opportunities to take up and participate in various such fields. Ma Atmadaya had also highlighted how whether it is in the decision making structures, whether it is the Sangha Sabha, the leadership councils, the governing councils of Kailasa, which includes women sannyasinis, the male sannyasis, householders of all backgrounds, including the transgender representatives. And these decisions are made on responsibility and contribution, not by gender quotas or tokenism like Mahatma Dea highlighted. So every the various different projects, whether the Gurukul or the in the Gurukul system that Mahatmadaya highlighted about. And I wanted to jump in here to add because I had the blessing to be brought up in the Nityananda Gurukul. I was just 11 years old when I met Swamiji, and that's the first time I had introduction. So my very introduction to the concept of Vedic feminism was, I from the very young age we were all taught of how there was no concept of, like I said, we were not taught about fighting for equality. To make try and make two people equal is violence on both of them. We were taught, Swamiji empowered us and made us understand to celebrate our uniqueness, to celebrate what we are, as to celebrate each of us as a manifestation of Para Shakti, that ultimate divine feminine consciousness. So, just wanted to add that in, Mahatmadaya, to the points that you were very beautifully highlighting.
Yes, Ma, thank you so much. Is Ma, would Ma Roshni like to add anything?
Yes, Ma, while we were discussing this, I was just thinking, so how does one awaken one's innate sacred feminine energy? And I think that's something that I'm sure everyone would want to know. So if we are all equally balanced in the energies, how does one awaken the part of yourself that's suppressed?
So that's the question you had for me.
It's a question I'm just posing.
The question you're posing. Well, to me, it's an obvious answer, which is, of course, the initiations from the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, because the science of awakening that from the root is exactly what currently is happening in Kailasa. So it isn't a case of the way I look at it isn't a case of just reading a book about it or taking a process and implementing it or going to a structure and educating yourself about it. It's a multi-dimensional happening which flowers in the presence of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, because he is adept in the science of supreme consciousness, which is some of the examples I was mentioning earlier, that it isn't about the physical body or identification of ourselves from the physical body, but it is actually working from the part of us which is genderless. So that's the answer to the question is to work to be in the presence of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, to actually experience and awaken that aspect, to get to the point of being genderless and allowing our unique qualities to express, to flower first of all, and then to express from that space. So you see, in Kailasa, there is global representation. So women leaders from Kailasa have actively participated in UN sessions, advocating for women's rights, sharing insights, part of Annalaya projects. And there's a high proportion of female leaders. Not to say that the men are missing, because I want to say that it is inclusive. It's inclusive of all genders. There's, matrilineal governance. The governance model mirrors ancient temple-centric joint family structures where women were custodians of knowledge, property, and decision-making. There is a lot of value in looking at these structures in a very serious manner to implement it across the globe. And it has value in the sense of, because it has been impactful, and even now, wherever there is, whichever family has a temple-centric joint family structure, which is rare these days because we've nuclearized, all the families have become nuclear families and probably split up into more so now smaller parts. There has been success. There is success. So the stability in these families is high. Example. So this matrilineal legacy is explicitly restored through the empowerment of Rudrakanyas, revival of female monastic order and Rudrakanya Sampradaya. That's what the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is doing. So Hinduism allows male priests to continue and keep the tradition alive in the absence of female monks and priests. Okay, so again, we have a lot to cover. There are scientific parallels as well. For example, meditation has shown to increase neuroplasticity, which is the brain's ability to form new connections and change its structure, allowing individuals to move beyond ingrained patterns of thought, including conditioned gender roles. Studies from institutions like Harvard and Stanford have demonstrated that mindfulness practices can improve cognitive functions, reduce emotional reactivity, and decrease implicit biases such as gender bias, especially in leadership contexts. I mean, I'll give you an example for myself, for instance. Many a times I've caught myself feeling a man is much stronger than me. Why is that? Why have I wired myself to feel a man is capable of more than I am? This is simply a gender bias. And we can go beyond this and get to a space. I've actually carried very, very heavy weight and broken that thought current of mine where I've believed that a male is more stronger than me. Example. So rewiring of the brain can happen. The brain isn't fixed. It can change and adapt throughout life. Meditation is a mental training that can include this change, a process called neuroplasticity. So, where the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is at this moment in time, with the depth that he brings to this topic, science is just beginning to explore and bring credibility to what the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is already been sharing for since his happening. So I would like to say that in general, to just sum this whole thing up, we're looking at understanding that most conflicts arise because we cling tightly to labels, including male, female, transgender. If you look at most of the conflicts that are happening when it comes to female rights or transgender rights, etc., or understanding on this topic, understanding each being on where they're at with this, there is a lot of conflict, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation, and cross-wiring going on. So these are only costumes worn by consciousness. This is the understanding that we want to take away. And by ensuring that every being in Kailasa grasps this and cognizes this truth, that all of these are just labels, they are only costumes worn by consciousness. When leaders drop these limiting ideas, they become channel for Paramashiva's intelligence, which is what I was touching upon earlier on. True innovation happens naturally. It doesn't need to be forced. There need not be stress on the body. So just an example, many great inventors, scientists, artists report entering states where they forget their own identity. You might have reported it to be said that people are in a flow. They become pure creativity itself. So in Kailasa, we use completion process, Nitya Dhyan Yoga, Puja, Yoga Nidra, so everyone can experience this transcendence daily, not just theoretically, but practically. Now, we also have social innovation, and the social innovation is not just about new technology or economic models, it's about fundamentally rethinking how society functions so that every being can live with dignity, fulfillment, and purpose. And in the modern world, true social innovation must address, of course, sustainability, inclusivity, spiritual fulfillment. How did ancient Sanatana Hindu Dharma achieve this? So the Vedas and Agamas describe a civilization where every aspect of life, from food to education to governance, was designed for both outer prosperity and inner enlightenment. So the Varna Ashrama Dharma system was originally meant to ensure everyone had a role based on their unique talents, guna, and actions, karma, not birth alone, which is what we mentioned earlier. Indigenous Hindu temples were not just places of worship, they were centers for free food, annadan, education, gurukul, healthcare, Ayurveda, arts, science, and community decision making. How does Kailasa revive these models today? In Kailasa, social innovation refers to the development and implementation of novel approaches rooted in Hindu spiritual principles and indigenous traditions to address societal challenges, practically concerning particularly concerning gender equality, empowerment, and community well-being. It involves reinterpreting ancient wisdom to create inclusive leadership structures, educational models, and social practices that challenge patriarchal and colonial norms and foster human potential. Sustainability, Annalaya. Free organic food distribution daily. No one goes hungry in Kailasa Adinams. Waste is composted, water is recycled, cows are protected, not exploited. Eco-friendly living. Buildings use Vastu principles for natural cooling, heating. Gardens grow native plants, social energy powers, many activities. Inclusivity. So all genders, including transgender individuals, are empowered to lead rituals, teach scriptures, manage projects. And of course, decision-making councils include elders, youth, women, transgender representatives based on responsibility, as we mentioned earlier. Then there's gender inclusive spiritual leadership. Ordination, Kailasa, particularly through the Aboriginal Indigenous Agricultural Tribes, AIAT, as mentioned earlier, implements social innovation by freely ordaining women and gender diverse individuals into monastic leadership roles, like example sannyas, a domain traditionally dominated by men. So this initiative breaks religious and social barriers, empowering women to conduct temple rituals and occupy senior spiritual and administrative leadership roles. The spiritual fulfillment, as mentioned earlier, daily puja, yoga, meditation are integrated into everyone's routine. Advocacy and human rights, UN representation and reports, as mentioned earlier. Combating persecution, Kailasa actively speaks out against the persecution of indigenous Hindu women, which includes false imprisonment, violence, public defamation. Challenging gender norms, Aboriginal Indigenous Agricultural Tribes explicitly challenges both colonial era gender laws and neo-Hindutva framework. In summary, Kailasa approach to gender inclusive leadership and social innovation is comprehensive, deeply spiritual, and practically oriented. I would say this model is needed more now than ever because modern scientists are facing crisis. Environmental collapse is happening due to unsustainable consumption, mental health epidemics due to lack of spiritual anchoring, social fragmentation. All this is happening due to exclusion and discrimination. Kailasa demonstrates that when you revive ancient enlightened models, people naturally care for each other because oneness is lived really, not in theory. All the resources are used responsibly because nature is revered as divine mother. Everyone feels included because leadership comes from responsibility and contribution, not external identity. So there is a lot. We would like to have probably a couple of days, even more so, with each and every one of you to go on into detail for every point. But I'd like to now invite Sarita Pasupaleti to share about conscious education, which is a key aspect for the topic that we are speaking on at the moment. So, Sarita, if you'd like to please share.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Nithyanandam, as Ma Atmadaya said, leadership comes from responsibility and contribution, not eternal identity. As we stand for the rights and justice, we must also dare to ask, what kind of future are we creating? The supreme point of Hinduism has gifted the world with a breakthrough reviving the original Vedic science of pregnancy called Ian pregnancy, where the womb itself becomes a spiritual ecosystem. It is the conscious technology of birthing powerful beings right from conception. Can you imagine a world where every child is born with this possibility? And through the revival of the ancient Gurukul system, these beings are nurtured into enlightened leaders living oneness, radiating responsibility, and driving innovation for humanity and our planet. Now, let us explore how conscious education and spiritual technology are not just ideas but living systems transforming lives here and now. Let's see how supreme point of Hinduism has created the technology of producing powerful beings right from conception, that Ian pregnancy. Pregnancy is not only a biological event, it is the most sacred opportunity to prepare the perfect vessel for the arrival of an intelligent, conscious being. The Ian pregnancy program, blessed and established by the supreme point of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, brings together the timeless wisdom of the Garbha Upanishad with the best of modern science to create what we call conscious birthing. Supreme point of Hinduism has given profound importance to this program because he reveals that the conscious of the mother and father during conception and pregnancy directly determines the intelligence, health, and spiritual potential of the child. By guiding by guiding parents through yoga, meditation, visualization, and Garbha Samvada, communing with the unborn child, he ensures the baby receives not only good health and biomemory, but also the ability to radiate higher intelligence and compassion. Ma Nityananda, you want to add anything here?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Sarita. I'll just make it short because I know we're in the interest of time and we have few more speakers who are waiting to share as well. So actually, just to add this end pregnancy and the Gurukul education system, the revival of the ancient indigenous education system that was established in Sanatana Hindu Dharma, which the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has revived now, is like Ma Sarita had beautifully highlighted, this 90% of babies demonstrate yogic mudras at birth. This end pregnancy, which is basically enlightened pregnancy, where in the womb itself the child is given the glimpse of an experience of its consciousness. In a world today where doom scrolling and addiction to depression, mobile phones are rampant, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has revived the science of enlightened pregnancy. And when we talk about the struggles that women are facing and the necessity for the revival of feminism, it's important to highlight where today there is still the female infanticide is prevalent in across the globe even today, and this enlightened pregnancy beautifully gives so much of completion healing to the mother and as well as the child. That is why 100% of all the people who have participated in the end pregnancy program have had painless deliveries. And so is the Nithyananda Gurukul education system, which is a revival of the Vedic education system, revived with modern scientific approach, which has a holistic curriculum. Here you all can see this a simple chart that projects where on an average, all the children of Nithyananda Gurukul have an IQ of above 130. They are in the category that is above average. Even the, let's say, for the lack of a better word, even the child who's very new, who's like, still not as, who just joins Gurukul, even that child being in the ambience of Gurukul immediately develops an higher IQ more than an average child on the outside. So the Gurukul provides 100% of the students in Gurukul practice traditional temple arts, 100% of the students conduct their own temple ritual, 30% spontaneously play musical instruments, and significant improvements in attention span, focus, and creativity. Children in Gurukul, women equally, are all empowered to be able to present, conduct classes. Like here, I'd like to take pride in sharing that being brought up in the Nithyananda Gurukul with the blessings of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, I have been empowered to represent Hinduism, my civilization, my culture and tradition in various global platforms, including here in the Science Summit. Today, I'm able to represent Kailasa and speak on various aspects to understand the depth of Sanatana Hindu Dharma. All of it is just the result of how Gurukul empowers every child. So whether the learning approach or how the Western STEM model prioritizes memorization and repetition, and in Vedic consciousness model, it is direct perception and manifestation. So similarly, we instead of external information and absorption, here we have the inner awakening and intuitive cognition. So in the Western STEM model, to this day, the structural barriers still persist. But here in the Vedic consciousness model, inherently inclusive of the feminine cognitions, and it is awakened in us. We are taught, we are brought up with that to be our lifestyle. So whether it is, the separation of the physical and mental bodies that happen in the Western STEM model, and in the Vedic consciousness model, from young age, we're all taught to recognize ourselves as consciousness, train our body in the best of yoga, train our mind with the best of powerful cognitions and truths. Same way, in the Western STEM model, it is problem solving through analysis, whereas in the Vedic consciousness model, it is creation through the conscious flowering, creation through awakening our conscious potential. And this is what the Nithyananda Gurukul offers, and this is what the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has revived. And I'd also like to highlight this Vedic feminism is not something that stands for children, just young who are Hindus. We have had women from various walks of life. In fact, we have Ma Samarpini, who's one of our speakers here today, who's from the New York. And she has been also empowered with this Vedic feminism. She is a businesswoman, she's an entrepreneur, and she's very successful in her life. And she has also been immensely benefited from this science. So I think it would be right for her to talk about this subject as well. So, Ma Samarpini, would you like to shed some light on this?
Just ask me any question. I'm happy to expound on it. There's so much information here. What would you like me to address? If we're looking at, are you able to hear me? Able to hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. We're able to hear you.
Yes. So I'm happy to speak on any part. What came up for me when I was listening to this conversation is to understand the role that consciousness has in our life, because that is all there is. And we need to understand it as ourselves. When I look at my clients and what I see they suffer with is identity crisis. And there's really only three things people suffer with in general, male, female, any gender, is that they feel they're different, which they actually are, but they don't see themselves as, celebrating their uniqueness. They don't see the essence and the truth of their existence. So they look at others and compare and feel, oh, I'm different. I can't have what they have. It is one problem everyone is coming in with. Second is it's not available to me. Whatever I want, I can't have it. That's because there's a limited understanding of who they are and the powerfulness that is innate within them, because they have become disconnected to who they are. There's 74% of the world believes in a higher power. It used to be more than that. But if you're not connected to the essential aspect of who you are, how can you ever feel confident and powerful? And the third thing that everyone is suffering from, because there are only three, is I'm not enough. And what I've experienced and learned through this Vedic science is understanding who I am essentially. And just by understanding the truth of my existence, I've become powerful in who I am and how I view the world around me and how I see others as extensions of myself. I'm no longer isolated in my small view, right? In my limited view. The Gurukul children, they have no idea that they can't do something or that something isn't available to them or that they are not enough. They really understand themselves in the purest sense that they are consciousness, they are powerful. When when I am with clients and they come in with any of these issues, I say, yes, you're different only because you're an individual consciousness, but you're a part of a oneness. And we are all individual consciousness, and that's what makes us equal. So, there's no less. There's no one that's more, that no one that can have more, and you can't have more. I mean, these are common experiences people are going through, and you think about empowering and looking outside, how can I become powerful? The powerfulness is you. And this science and everything that I have learned and experienced and been initiated into through the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has really just removed the blinders and opened me up to a very high, expansive view of life and myself as part of that life, an intrinsic part of that oneness. There's oneness, not two-ness. And I think that is a difficult thing to understand. But if we saw the grace in that understanding, how life would be very different for each of us individually, and then the whole also would essentially change. So the education system that we're in now is actually what I see in many of my clients is an education system, especially here in the West, that is disconnecting, that makes someone constantly compare themselves to the external world and not ever really dive into the depth of who they are and the knowing of who they are, which is essentially a purpose in life. So we are lost because we are running after things that we don't really want, and we don't even know it. So it's essential to really see the solutions that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is offering us with an open door and an open heart, inviting us to have this science, to imbibe this science, to grow, expand, to become one with others, to feel connected to all there is, and do it and live in a nonviolent manner. It is love-based. This is a beautiful opening and experience that we have to share with the world. And the world is needing this now because peace happens within each one of us. That, is anyone like to add to that?
That's absolutely wonderful, Masamarpini. To sum up that the education that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is reviving is coming right. It's not even from after the child is born, but it's actually from the moment even before conception.
Yes.
Before conception, the ambience is created, the atmosphere is created, the ecosystem is created for a conscious being to arrive. So the mother and father are educated in the right way to create the right ambience to have a high consciousness being land, and from there the education continues. So where the modern education, actually the contemporary education, looks at once the child is born, put them into a school from a certain age, have a curriculum which is the same. So there's an image that I've seen of all the animals and the lion sitting at the desk and saying, now all the animals need to climb a tree, which is what the test is. And it makes no sense because the giraffe doesn't need to climb a tree. The giraffe is adept at, just being on the ground and getting all the leaves. So it's that education system that, it's like a cookie cutter education system as opposed to awakening the uniqueness in each being. So with that, we come to the end, almost end of the presentation. Anyone who has any questions, please do add them into the chat box and we will attend to it. If not today, we'll reach out to you and definitely respond. And I'd invite Ma Samirpani to share with us what the collaboration and partnership points are available.
So at the very heart of this summit lies the truth that the revival of Vedic feminism by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is not just for Kailasa, it is not just for Hindus. It is a conscious breakthrough for all humanity. And this is a revival of the science of the awakened feminine, where women and girls are venerated, nurtured as embodiments of Parashakti, the divine feminine consciousness, and the spiritual technologies, the educational models and empowerment protocols revealed and demonstrated by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism are open source gifts to the world. And we've already witnessed this in action. I myself experienced this in my life and in my practice. And in a historic UN event of Hindu feminine empowerment collaborations, indigenous Hindu women and Rudrakanyas representing Kailasa, invoked by Devi Parashakti at the United Nations, at a time when, according to the United Nations, women represent only 33% of researchers worldwide and account for just 1 in 5 people in cutting-edge fields like AI. The urgency of change cannot be overstated. Collaboration is not just possible, it is essential if we are to create an innovative and compassionate planet that truly leaves no woman or girl behind. So how collaboration can happen? Kailasa offers its living body of spiritual sciences as practical tools for empowerment, and this includes third eye awakening, yogic sciences for body-mind mastery, and science of completion, processes, among others, for healing trauma. The UN governments, educational institutions, and NGOs can integrate these into their schools and women's empowerment programs. Training modules, facilitator programs, and digital resources are available for universal adaptation. The UAN is training women leaders, where Kailasa is a founding member. Indigenous women across the globe are not merely included, but actively trained to become leaders. Women graduating from these programs have gone on to hold decision-making authority, serve as ambassadors worldwide, and act as bridges between cultures. The UAN represents a replicable model that other governments and organizations can adopt to rapidly scale leadership capacity among women and girls. Kailasa is the only nation on earth where 80% of leadership positions are held by women and 90% of parliamentary roles are with women leaders. This is not accidental, it is structural. The national deities of Kailasa are Paramashiva and Paramashakti, installed by the SPH Bhagavan Nithyananda Paramashivam as an eternal reminder that gender inclusivity is divinely mandated. Every girl grows up in a safe environment because Kailasa enforces a zero tolerance policy against discrimination towards women and girls. So in practical terms, this means safe spaces for women to learn, innovate, and lead without fear. Social frameworks that actively dismantle gender bias, and policy and cultural ecosystems where Parashakti, the divine consciousness, is honored, not sidelined. Kailasa invites governments, the UN, universities, research bodies, and think tanks to join us in a unique journey of discovery. Here, individuals from across the full spectrum of genders manifest profound yogic powers known as Shaktis, demonstrating measurable impact on creativity, leadership, and innovation. Through our trauma healing completion processes, we offer scalable interventions for those recovering from abuse, fostering resilience, and holistic well-being, regardless of gender identity. In Kailasa's Gurukul education system, thousands of children of every gender are nurtured to achieve extraordinary focus, confidence, creative potential, blending ancient wisdom with modern advancement. And we invite educators and policymakers to partner with Kailasa and adopt Gurukul-style pilot projects for your regions, enriching learning environments with both Vedic knowledge and inclusivity. We encourage researchers to initiate joint studies documenting the remarkable impact of awakening Shakti-based sciences across the genders. And for NGOs and social initiatives, we urge you to collaborate on trauma healing camps and leadership workshops designed to empower and uplift marginalized and underrepresented genders, ensuring equity, dignity, and opportunity for all. Together, let's shape a future that celebrates the divine diversity of gender and honors the fullness of human potential. And through international forums and conferences, Kailasa connects Indigenous Hindu women leaders and scientists with their counterparts worldwide. And such networks expand the collective intelligence of feminine leadership, enabling breakthroughs across sciences, governance, and spirituality. We have a vision. Our vision is a world where every woman and girl awakens to her innate divinity, the living Shakti within, and manifests extraordinary innovation from oneness consciousness. Through collaboration with Kailasa's spiritual technologies, empowerment frameworks, and educational models revealed by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, we invite all nations, organizations, educators, researchers, and above all, women themselves to join this sacred movement. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Ma Samirpini. That was really inspirational. And I want to thank each and every one of our speakers who've been here and shared the sacred truths revealed by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam. Our reverence to the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam, for giving us this beautiful opportunity to represent Kailasa and all of the sacred truth revealed by the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism himself. To each and every one of you that has attended, thank you so much for registering. And if you have any questions, if you have not registered, I would invite you to please share your email so we can send you some of the slide information that we have and some very informational videos that you can take away with you. So we welcome you to share your email if you have not registered. If you have registered, we do have your email details and we will forward you all the information. Once again, thank you so much to each and every one of you that has participated, to each and every one of the speakers. We shall end with the Purana Mantra now. Thank you. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Tat Sat Sarvam Bhagavate Shri Nithyananda Paramashiva Padkarpanamastu. Om Nithyanandam. Thank you.